edition of Straight Talk. Tim, you're out there in New Zealand. I'm currently at the bottom end of Bruny Island in Tasmania. Couldn't be further away from where you are at the moment. But anyway, regardless of that, what's the vibe and what's the sort of feel around the sale grounds at the moment, a couple of days out from the big sale of the New Zealand season?
Look, Bren is coming to you from the Curramore Marquee, thanks to Gordon Cunningham. The vibe's pretty good, to be honest. I think, it is asked a few people, obviously off the back of the Magic Millions, for this market. A lot of the traders are here from Australia. Obviously, key export market is Australia. There's a few Hong Kong buyers as well. Ricky Yu and trainers like that come down to this sale, and they're pretty optimistic. I think that it's going to be a solid sale. Of course, there's going to be patches, in and out, like, or sticky as it was described at the Gold Coast. That'll be the case here. But overall, they're pretty confident, particularly with sort of an uptick in, investment and sort of sentiment from domestically, with the locals wanting to get back involved with after sort of the injection of prize money from the Entain tab deal.
Yeah, I think like $5 million they spent more last year than the year before, and we're probably going to see that sort of trend go to the next level, aren't we, Tim? With the amount of confidence going on in the New Zealand industry, I guess the big prize money races. They've got obviously Karaka Million Day on Saturday, and then going forward to that big Champions Day in early March, which promises to be a big day with their first running NZB Kiwis. There's plenty of reasons for the local trainers and local owners to invest, isn't there?
Absolutely. The prize money's pretty good. The horses have performed well. I think NZB's been marketing it. They've got 8% of the foal crop and Australasian foal crop, and winning sort of 20% of the Group 1s over the last year or two. So, value for money, as we'll hear from Mark Chitty from Haunui soon, that he touched on that, the value for money that you can get at Karaka as opposed to Australian sales.
Yeah, it's interesting about the Kiwi vendors and the Kiwi, I guess, because they've been a long time into this mode around about trading, I suppose, trading horses to Australia, to Hong Kong, all this sort of stuff. They're pretty aware where the market sits, aren't they, Tim? They don't tend to get too, they tend to get too caught up in current trends or whatever. They understand where the market's coming from. And there's a sort of a real sense of, needing to get business done there on the ground at Karaka, isn't there?
They're sellers. I spent a bit of time with Windsor Park, Rodney Schick and Sims Davison from Mapley yesterday, probably too long with them. We broke curfew, but they long-time breeders. They breed a good horse, and, Rodney Schick and Windsor, they breed on scale. That's their model, and they breed to sell, and you can buy good horses from 20,000 to, $500,000 plus. So, as I said, it's pretty busy. Inspections are they're not wrapping up. There's still Saturday to go before the sale starts on Sunday, but plenty of activity here at the moment.
Tim, you spoke to Mark Chitty of Haunui Farm, as you mentioned, about how he sees the sale progressing and his anticipation for a couple of his key yearling offerings.
Got a lovely draft here, Mark, and including two, or probably the sales highest profile fillies, obviously a sister to Orchestral and sister Savabeel out of Londonella.
Yeah, very privileged to bring both those fillies to the sale. Obviously, Savabeel needs no introduction to anybody.
You want to see?
Yep. Savabeel's champion stallion. He's left, Group 1 winning fillies. We were fortunate enough to sell Orchestral 2 years ago for $625,000, and last year we sold Rondanella's first foal, He Who Dares, now named, one start, one win for $825,000. So to bring those horses to the market is exciting, a little nerve-wracking, but they're two quality fillies by a champion sire out of great families.
And we've seen, last year, Peter Moody's just been here inspecting your draft. He bought the sister to Prowess for $1.6 million. Magic Millions fillies out average the Colts. The buyers are seeing value in the high quality fillies.
Oh, without doubt, I think over the last sort of 10 years, the value in the highly credentialed race mares that have been raced and then been offered back into the market, into the breeders' market, has been significant. But when you look at the fillies out in New Zealand and being able to get them by a champion sire from very, very active families, it gives probably the Southern Hemisphere offers that the most, the Northern Hemisphere a little less. And so, that they meet with very high demand.
We found inspections this week across the board. Obviously, those fillies will command a lot of interest, but you've got a big draft.
Yeah, we've got 31 yearlings in the book one draft. We've got, across the draft of 50 across both books, 22 stallions operators are being represented. And, there's a horse for everybody. I think inspections has been very much in line with the last couple of years. What I've found is number of people that possibly in the past might not have looked at everything, have looked at everything. And I think that's because some of the investors like to ask more than one person their opinion on a horse if they're going to invest. So, and no better than if a trainer's looked at horses, they get an opportunity, they pass an opinion and they like it, they might get it to train. So I think it's meant that inspections has been steady. It hasn't been crazy, but it's been steady.
Can you take anything out of what happened at the Gold Coast market-wise, how it might play out here?
Look, the Gold Coast has been a barometer for all sales. We're a different style of sale, obviously, with the new, predominantly the New Zealand breeds. I think, our dollar being a little bit weaker is probably positive. Racing here in New Zealand's a lot stronger than it was, 3 and 5 years ago. The performance of the horses in the Southern Hemisphere, both in Australia and Hong Kong, the New Zealand breeds has been solid enough. And we represent value. We've only got one stallion here standing at over $100,000 or better. And so there's not so much money in the horses as they present to the ring. And, our average is, in around that 160, 170,000. So people can shop for a good amount of value in the next week.
So on the back of that, Tim, what would be a successful sale, do you think, for NZB and for the New Zealand vendors, do you feel?
Oh, look, I think if they can sort of hold on last year or down slightly, as sort of Mark mentioned in that interview before, that service fees are pretty, comparatively to Australia, are pretty good or value. So, there's only one salary bill at 100,000 that they don't have to, sell the horses for too much. They can make an earn selling them for quite good value. And so I think that will ensure that the clearance rate is pretty reasonable. There won't be, as we said, they are sellers. So I think around par from last year, down slightly, they'd be happy enough.
Tim, quick aside for now from the bloodstock world, I guess, it was an interesting week this week to see Coolmore buying a mare Fashion Faux Pas off the English sales, who they see a good match for City of Troy. Now, it was probably the first strong indication that, the well-credentialed son of Justify, the globe-trotting son of Justify, who's, Coolmore rate very highly from an international point of view, and it would appear the strongest indication yet that horse is probably headed down to Australia later this year.
Well, Coolmore Australia, Tom Magner and Justin Carey, the stud manager, they're Paddy Power and so forth. They're definitely campaigning, wanting City of Troy to shuttle down here. I think he will, just depending. And I did speak to Tom Magner earlier today that he said that the Northern Hemisphere season's about to start, and so they'll get how he copes with that and everything. Once if he's fires on all cylinders there, I'm sure big chance of coming down. That access to that Justify sideline will be very popular.
Yeah, and obviously Justify himself, I think, spent 4 seasons here across 5 years, Tim, and key for him, of course, becoming I think the first internationally bred champion first season sire in Australia for, around about 20 years or 18 years or something since More Than Ready. So, the impact of Justify was quite significant when he was here. And obviously to get his blood lines to come through would be significant as well. The other sort of aspect from a racing perspective, Tim, was the story this week that Caulfield will be highly likely to get the Cox Plate. Now, many Valley are saying that no decision's been made, but our sources at the Straight believe that a decision is sort of, relatively soon in the next couple of weeks. We're likely to see an announcement put out there that Cox Plate in 2026, where Moonee Valley's being, completely sort of knocked over and redeveloped and moved around. They'll miss one Cox Plate for Moonee Valley, be held at Caulfield. I mean, what does, Tim, does that, is it a surprise? And B, I guess the other one is, what does a Cox Plate look like at Caulfield? Does it still, maintain that, I guess, that aura that race has?
I don't think it's a surprise at all. Brennan team's quite logical. I don't think Flemington would want to hold, a marquee race. Well, I'm sure they would financially, but this doesn't make sense with 4 days, racing coming up and, Caulfield, a tighter sort of track, obviously not the same as Moonee Valley, but still a little bit of tight. I think it makes perfect sense, and I'm sure it will still be a spectacle. The Cox Plate, it's always a great race, and whether it's at Moonee Valley, the new Moonee Valley, or Caulfield, it'll be a good race.
And a quick circle back to the wagering world, Tim. It's an interesting time of year, I suppose. I've spoken to a few people in the wagering world in the last couple of weeks or so. A few up in the Gold Coast, a couple this week, and I guess there's a bit of a feel of while bloodstock sort of gets straight back into it at the Gold Coast and into Karaka, and the racing world doesn't take too long. We're only a couple of weeks away from the first Group 1 of the season. We've got feature races being run. The wagering world, while it ticks on, probably from a corporate decision and corporate way, things aren't sort of done relatively quickly. What is interesting is that they're still waiting for this decision from the federal government, and from the words of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese this week, it doesn't seem like it's high on their agenda to get this done before the federal election. And what that makes it interesting from our perspective is, I guess, from a broader industry perspective, is that we've got, is that there's a little chance of a change of government. So we're just probably not going to know where this sits. And there's obviously a potential $1 billion impact, which is what the wagering industry say it'll have on them, and the flow on of maybe $200-300 million to the racing industry. So it's a big decision, assuming that decision's made. And I said, I'm not going to see it before then. But I guess, Tim, it flows back to what we're talking about the connectivity between the wagering industry and the racing industry, and then further order the bloodstock industry, isn't it? I mean, if you look at what we've done, what we've already talked about already, with what's going on with the investment in New Zealand, it sort of speaks to, obviously, we've seen what Entain's investment in New Zealand has done in terms of confidence. We've got another measure of that this week at the sales, but it's certainly an interesting time in terms of the intersection between all these, wagering and bloodstock and racing industries.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Entain, Tab New Zealand guys, they're all here. Obviously, they've got their Tab New Zealand Racing Club, and they're certainly inspecting horses at the moment, fillies, and so how active they'll be, I'm not sure, but they're certainly here inspecting, and they had the partnership with Henry Field from Newgate, and he's here inspecting as well, and a lot of high-profile agents actually. James Harron's here for the first time in a few years and inspecting big numbers of yearlings, which is interesting. It's not just sort of, top lots sort of high-profile horses looking at 500 yearlings. So obviously, as we sort of touched on at the start of this podcast, a lot of big players see value in the New Zealand industry.
Tim, thanks for joining us in for New Zealand. Have an enjoyable week out there. It should be a fascinating next few days. We'll keep up to date with all the latest what's going on in Karaka. Thanks for listening to Straight Talk. Don't forget to give us a rating on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Podbean, YouTube, a variety of other things. This will be obviously, you would notice it was just as audio podcast just because of the practicalities of being in different locations, but we'll be back with our normal video podcast next week. And enjoy your week and enjoy the action from Karaka. Hi all, just a voice note here at the end of the podcast that not long after we finished recording, it was announced that Racing Queensland CEO Jason Scott will be leaving his role later this year. A not insignificant story in the racing landscape. We'll have all the coverage of that on thestraight.com.au, and we'll have a chat about that on our next week's edition of Straight Talk. Talk to you then.